The drama unfolded around 11:30 last night while on the final leg of a drive from Wollongong to Barmah on the Murray River. According to Doris Kapetko, despite the dark night, they suddenly became well aware of the strange shape above them.
You could see the outline of like a diamond shape.
How big was it?
4 or 5 times the size of our car.
And just hovering?
Well, it was moving. It was definitely moving across us quite slowly enough to see.
Making any noise at all?
No noise at all.
Today, while recovering from the shock, they described not only their ordeal, but went on to illustrate to graphic artist Jenny Gillies the object they claimed to have encountered.
It had three big lights, a great big light at the front which was red with a small yellow light next to it, and then there were 2 other lights, one on each. They appeared to be on a corner, which was a blue light and a yellow light.
According to Doris, a registered nurse, until last night, UFOs were a figment of people's imagination. Her sister Helen, on the other hand, claims to have encountered them before.
Oh, I've seen them a couple of times, but...
And you don't report them?
No.
Why?
Well, people think you're silly out here.
Last night's alleged sightings are being taken very seriously by police and the Royal Australian Air Force. At the centre of the UFO hoo-ha are 2 young police officers from St Kilda. Their response to calls reporting strange lights and a 10-metre cylindrical object hovering over Point Ormond at Elwood led them to this strange burnt patch.
It was dark at the time we looked at it, and we were quite curious because quite frequently we get people having bonfires and barbecues here, but as you can quite well see that there's no firewood or anything, and at the time when we checked it at 3 o'clock this morning there was no firewood, so we had to treat it as if something unusual had happened.
Constable Dolan says witnesses around St Kilda reported 2 orange lights glowing at either end of the object and a blast of light as it took off. They claim that blast left the strong fuel smell and the burn.
Well, in light of what's happened overseas, particularly in the Soviet Union, I'm liable to believe anything at this stage.
But the sighting wasn't only made here at St Kilda. Apparently people all round the bay and from as far away as Geelong and Frankston reported seeing strange lights or a strange object in the sky. And that was over a period of more than an hour. Calls to police came from Frankston and Geelong and further down the eastern side of the bay to Sandringham and Brighton, then across to Altona and of course back to St Kilda. Last night's encounter is apparently part of a wave of UFO sightings currently sweeping the world. These shots taken by amateur cameramen over Oklahoma this week show a bright light shooting across the night sky. And recently this strange object was captured darting around houses in California. Even the Soviet Union is in on the act with claims that aliens landed in a public park in a town just 200 kilometres from Moscow. Maybe it won't be too long before we no longer have to guess at what Martians really look like.
In a remote part of South Australia's Flinders Ranges, a strange 32-foot circle is etched into the grassy slope of a hill. Owner of the property, Joan Crawford, says it's the remains of an incident back in March witnessed by herself and a neighbour, which she's certain was an extraterrestrial visit.
I saw this enormous light and I stood there and it must have been 5 to 6 minutes. My legs were like a half-set jelly. I was so scared.
These photographs show the circle and other small patches soon after the incident, but the marks haven't faded. Whatever happened here that night has left an obvious scar on the face of this hill. It's now 7 months after the incident, and while Salvation Jane is abundant, where the original marks were, vegetation still refuses to grow.
It is dead, the grass is dead, and on the circles there's nothing growing.
Jones reported the incident to UFO investigators, but in the meantime, she's at a loss to explain what happened.
I told my neighbours and they all laughed at me, bar my grandson Wesley, who thought, well, if we can go to the moon, they can come down here.
What is it? It's the stuff of science fiction. Unexplained glowing objects moving in a pitch-black sky, witnessed by 15 students and their 2 teachers.
Stars don't do that.
What are they? The group was on a 3-day camp at Vivon Bay on the south coast of Kangaroo Island, enjoying a bonfire, when 5 lights appeared and started moving towards them.
They just kept coming and coming, really bright lights, obviously not stars. They got really a lot closer to us. Then they lined up and stayed in formation.
According to the students, the objects were more than 50,000 feet above ground level.
A plane moved by after, about half an hour after, and it was much lower.
The students reported their sighting to police and also rang the UFO Society and Air Traffic Control, who couldn't explain the sightings. Some locals say they're not the least bit surprised at what the class witnessed. They believe UFO sightings above the island are on the increase.
Well, the last few weeks there's been a few people saying things around town and that, and blokes talking in the pub saying they've seen lights and things. A lady the other day said she was followed in her car.
Ironically, the trip to Perth began with a viewing of the movie Gremlins. Just after midnight Monday morning, the Ansett Pioneer bus was taking 25 passengers between Mundrabilla and Madura when a bright light with another small light circling it confronted the vehicle and then followed the bus for 8 kilometres.
It seemed to just hover there for a couple of seconds, and I went past it. And I looked in the rear vision mirror, and it came in behind the bus, and then it stayed around about 1 kilometre behind me. And
Peter Chapman kept driving but alerted 5 other passengers who were awake. They were stunned and frightened as the glowing 3-metre sphere chased them. In January this year, the Knowles family from Perth claimed their car was buzzed and then lifted into the air by a similar object. Peter Chapman laughed off their claims, but Monday morning's experience has changed his mind. In 4 years of driving this road, he's seen nothing like it.
And I didn't believe it in it at all, that's UFO stuff, but I do now. It's totally different.
Unfortunately, no passenger could find a camera aboard to capture these few moments on film.
It was early morning on the sparse wasteland of the Nullarbor Plain when Faye Knowles and her 3 sons claim they heard an ear-splitting whir as they were chased by a glowing orange object. The Perth family was driving east on the Air Highway near Mundrabilla, less than 100 kilometres from the South Australian border. Mrs Knowles has told police at Ceduna the egg-shaped UFO landed on their car as they were travelling at over 100 kilometres an hour. It swung the vehicle around before dropping it with such force it blew a tyre.
What about the people? Were they harmed at all?
Weren't harmed, but visibly shaken up.
When the strange object disappeared, Mrs Knowles and her sons Patrick, Sean and Wayne found their Telstar sedan covered in black ash. Truck drivers on the Nullarbor say there have been at least 3 UFO sightings since Christmas. Graham Henley saw the Knowles family at a Mundrabilla roadhouse. He confirmed they appeared shaken and upset.
I really couldn't explain it in normal everyday terms, but those people were interfered with by something.
And today, support for the bizarre story from another Perth family travelling along the Nullarbor.
Massive light. It was very, very bright. I mean, it would have to have a lot of power in those lights to light up the whole area, and the sky was lit above it.
It was
strange.
Bright.
It was a strange phenomenon. It was
much too bright.
As Brad and Cheryl Kerslake were driving home along the Hume Highway near Puckapunyal Army Base last night, they noticed a very large object 20 metres away, hovering silently just above the ground.
We said to each other it was at a house with lots of lights. They're crazy, and my husband said, no, it's a spaceship. And I said, don't say that. I said, look again. So we sort of really slowed down and we had a good look, and I'll tell you, it was a spaceship.
The Kerslakes are well respected in the community as being reliable and level-headed.
Before you saw this thing, did you believe in UFOs?
No, no, never.
And do you believe in them now?
My word, I do. Yep. They're here for a reason.
Well, I can actually say that I've never seen them before. I've never experienced anything quite like it before.
A close encounter of the second kind in the Great Sandy Desert. Just another UFO story? Not this one.
Well, I've seen things that shouldn't be in where they are, you know.
But never anything like this?
No. Never actually like that, you know. Not at all.
4 separate sightings over a 4-hour period. The first at Lake Gregory, the last at Wolf Creek Crater. Check the map. They're both in the middle of nowhere. What was your reaction when you saw the lights for the first time?
It's a funny sensation. You feel the hairs in your legs sort of curling, and your heart's beating at about 1 million things per second, and your arms and legs sort of don't want to move.
So, what was it? I don't know. Don't know.
From the first sighting near Lake Gregory, Monty, Wayne and Brett travelled 40 kilometres down the track. They pulled up on the side of the road for a bite to eat. That's when the object appeared yet again, long enough for photographs to be taken. Photographs which have already been proved legitimate. The clearest shot shows the object to be pale blue in colour. It was a cloudy sky with no moon. Both men say the thing had definite shape and form. Over the sizzling snaggers, Monty continues.
And next thing, this thing's there again. Well, that's when I got the photo, the shot of the truck, you know. And well, there was this rumbling noise, just sounded like a car at high speed coming over corrugation, you know. And there was no cars. And then we stepped back from the fire, and then this thing was sitting there.
Virtually right on top of you?
Yeah, on the truck.
By day, Monty runs a taxi service around Kununurra. He's well known in the area and cares little for outsiders' opinions. What about the people who say they're just a couple of guys who've lived in the bush too long? I guess you've had a few of them too.
Yeah, that's the old story, isn't it, you know? Been out in the scrub too long, yeah.
You don't go with that one, of course.
No.
The Kimberley Echo was the first paper to print the photos. James O'Kenny, who runs the torrid tabloid, is also well known in these parts. A straight shooter? You betcha.
Some of which I discount.
Would there be any reason to doubt what Monty and Wayne are saying?
Well, I'm always a bit sus, being in the same game as you, being in the media business, but I made it very plain to them, and you know, I'm involved with them. They do a lot of work for me and otherwise, and I said, if you make a fool of me, look out.
The third member of the trio, Brett Rogers, was so shaken he refused to leave the truck while the object hovered overhead. But it wasn't just the sight and sound that made the skin crawl.
The funny part about it was, from when we had tea until the last time we'd seen it, we started off again. We had no two-way contact, nothing, like as if we were blaming one another's two-way for breaking down, you know.
It was virtually on the ground at the first sighting, and it was there until Monty took that last photograph, and then it appeared to move off. And Monty got back in the truck and said to me on the radio, he said, "What happened to the lights? They've gone out." And from the photograph, that last photograph he took, the actual thing was actually off the ground. I can't even say what I saw, and it was unusual. It was huge, and I can't explain it. It's simple as that.
Monty, Wayne and Brett saw something on the night of March the 5th. What it was remains a mystery. It'll probably stay that way forever. The skeptics will write it off. The fanatics will write it down in the record books.